I'm not proud of how long I let this man get inside my head. I'm not proud of how many nights I stayed late, how many weekends I canceled, how many times I told myself, it's just work, don't take it personally. But you can only repeat that lie so many times before something inside you buckles. And the night my boss ignored my messages for 12 straight hours, only to call me at 11 p.m. and smirk into the phone like he owned my entire life, that was the night something shifted in me for good. I'll start from the part where this whole thing actually became personal, not from the months of subtle jabs or the public jokes at my expense, not from the constant gaslighting or the countless times he made me redo tasks he never explained in the first place. No. The real story begins on a Thursday morning when I walked into the office with a problem that wasn't supposed to be mine, but somehow already had my fingerprints all over it. We had a major client presentation scheduled for the next day, a presentation my boss, Mark, was supposed to finalize weeks ago. Instead, he'd spent the last 2 weeks working remotely, which in Mark language meant long lunches, disappearing acts, and sudden urgent errands that always seemed to involve golf clubs. I wasn't surprised when I opened my email that morning and saw a thread from the client asking for confirmation on details I had never even seen before. What did surprise me was the pit in my stomach, telling me Mark was going to dump this entire mess on me. I texted him immediately. Morning, need clarity ASAP on tomorrow's deck, missing 3 sections. 5 minutes passed. 10. Nothing. I sent another message, more direct. Client is asking for confirmation. Can we talk? Still nothing. I knew he was awake. He always posted something smug on his Instagram story before 8:30 a.m. And sure enough, when I checked, there it was. A photo of his breakfast, some overpriced pastry, and a caption that said, "Fueling greatness. Great." By noon, the situation was getting dangerous. The client emailed again, this time CCing Mark, which meant I had no way to pretend things were under control. I called him. He didn't pick up. I called again. Straight to voicemail. I called from a different number. Still nothing. I wasn't just anxious, I was pissed. There's a very specific kind of anger you feel when someone with power over you intentionally ignores you. It's not the loud, explosive kind. It's quiet, focused, sharp, like something pulling your ribs inward. Around 3 p.m., the client called me directly, asking if we were still on schedule. I did what I always did, covered for Mark. I told them we were finalizing everything and would deliver by evening. It was a lie, a stupid lie, but the only one that could buy me a few more hours. I emailed Mark again, this time attaching a draft of the deck and flagging missing pieces. 10 minutes, 20, an hour. No reply. By 6 p.m., everyone else had gone home. I stayed in the empty office with the hum of the AC unit filling the silence. My laptop screen glowed with incomplete slides, notes that didn't make sense, and tasks that should have been Mark's responsibility. I wasn't paid enough to fix this, but if I didn't, I would be the one blamed for it. I sent him one more message, longer this time, spelling out every missing detail and every risk if we didn't deliver. I wasn't begging. I wasn't even emotional. It was just facts. Cold, simple facts. Hours passed. Nothing. At 9 p.m., I finally closed my laptop. I wasn't going to sit there all night waiting for a man who couldn't be bothered to acknowledge my existence. I drove home, ate whatever leftovers I had, and sat on the couch staring at my phone like an idiot. I told myself to let it go, to sleep, to deal with it in the morning. But I couldn't. I kept imagining the fallout. The client blaming me, the director asking why I didn't escalate, Mark pretending he had been reachable the whole time and twisting the narrative like he always did. At 10:59 p.m., my phone buzzed. Incoming call. Mark, I answered, and before I could say a word, I heard him chuckle. Not a nervous laugh, not a tired one. A smirk, a sound people make when they enjoy holding something over you. Then he said it, calm, slow, like he'd been rehearsing the line all day. You know, people like you should be grateful I even let you stay in this company. His words didn't hit me like an insult. They landed like confirmation, like he was finally saying out loud what he'd been thinking for months. I didn't respond right away. I let the silence sit between us long enough for him to wonder if the call had dropped. It hadn't. "Mark," I finally said, my voice steady, "you ignored me all day." He scoffed. "I was busy. You think the world revolves around you? I can't jump every time you panic." Panic. That was the word he always used. Anytime someone asked for clarity, anytime someone questioned his decisions, anytime someone tried to hold him accountable. Panic. He weaponized that word like it absolved him of responsibility. "I wasn't panicking," I said. "We have a presentation in the morning and half the information is missing." "That," he replied, "sounds like a you problem." I felt my jaw tighten. "It's your deck." "It's our deck," he corrected, stretching the word like chewing gum. "And since you're the one who's been asking for more responsibility, here you go. Step up. Handle it." There it was. The setup. The trap disguised as opportunity. Before I could respond, he added, "And lose the attitude. If you can't manage a simple client deck, maybe you're not ready for this level." Something inside me twitched, but not the way he expected. Not fear. Not shame. Clarity. "I messaged you at 8, 10, 11, 1, 3, 4, 6. "You don't need to recap your meltdown," he interrupted. I saw the messages. I chose not to respond. If you want to grow here, you need to think for yourself, not run to me every 5 minutes. I closed my eyes and pressed 2 fingers against my temple. "You weren't reachable. At all." He gave a short laugh, the same smirk I'd heard earlier. "You know what your problem is? You're soft. You want everything explained. You want constant validation. I've worked with real professionals. They don't need hand-holding." Something about that line flipped a switch in me. Professionals? Mark hadn't completed a full project himself in nearly a year. Half the team secretly called him a delegation machine, because every task he touched ended up on someone else's desk. He hid behind buzzwords and charisma, and somehow upper management ate it up. "What exactly did you do today?" I asked. The question caught him off guard. "That's none of your concern," he snapped. "But the project is my concern," I said, "and your unavailability put us at risk." "Watch your tone." "For what?" The words came out calmer than I felt. "For expecting you to do your job." He went silent, the kind of silence that isn't confusion but calculation. I could practically hear him reshuffling the narrative in his head. "You know what?" he said finally. "I'll deal with this tomorrow. You clearly can't handle pressure." And then he hung up. Just like that. 12 hours of ignoring me. A midnight call just to condescend, and now he was done talking. I stared at the screen for a long moment, breathing slowly, counting each inhale the way my brother taught me years ago, when he said controlled breathing helps men think instead of explode. It worked. I didn't explode, I shifted. Because that was just the beginning. The next morning I arrived an hour early. Not for him, for myself. I needed time to cool off, time to get ahead, time to prepare. But when I opened the shared drive to assemble the missing sections, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. Mark had locked the folder, not just locked it. He had restricted access to every file related to the presentation, meaning the only person who could finish it was him, meaning he had intentionally ignored me while withholding the materials, meaning he was now set up to claim that I had failed to deliver. My first reaction wasn't anger, it was disbelief. Then something colder settled in. I checked the email logs. He'd been online the whole day. He wasn't busy. He'd been watching the clock, letting me drown. Mini-hook flashed in my mind like a warning light. This wasn't incompetence. This was strategy. I spent the next hour gathering everything I did have. Screenshots of emails, the client messages, the automated activity logs showing his access history. The timestamps of every message I sent. Not revenge, not yet, just evidence. At 9:05 a.m., Mark walked in. Sunglasses, coffee, the casual arrogance of someone who never faced consequences. "Morning," he said, like nothing happened. "Morning," I answered, matching his tone so perfectly he didn't notice the difference. He settled into his chair, opened his laptop, sighed dramatically, and said, "So, it seems someone didn't finish the deck." I looked at him. Not down, not away. At him. "You locked the files." He froze for a millisecond, the kind of tiny pause people make before pretending they didn't hear you. "Sorry," he said lightly. "You locked the files," I repeated. "I couldn't access them. You didn't respond all day. The client followed up 3 times. He shrugged. "I can't babysit access permissions." "It wasn't a mistake," I said. "The activity logs show you changed the permissions yesterday morning." He looked irritated, not because I accused him, but because I had information he didn't expect me to have. "Listen," he said, leaning back. "This isn't about logs. This is about initiative. You could have drafted the missing sections. You didn't. So now I have to step in last minute and clean up your mess." Something hot crawled up my spine. "My mess?" I repeated. "Yeah," he said. "Your mess." And there, right there, was my first micro-catharsis. Because for the first time, I didn't let it slide. "Mark," I said slowly, "if you're going to lie, at least pick a version that matches the timestamps." His eyes sharpened. He wasn't used to pushback, especially not from me. Before he could form a comeback, I added, "Next time you try to set me up, make sure you're not leaving a digital trail." He stared at me, really stared, and for the first time since I'd known him, I saw something flicker behind his expression. Not fear, not guilt. Awareness, a realization that I wasn't going to be his quiet backup anymore. He didn't say another word. He grabbed his laptop, stood up abruptly, and marched toward the conference room, the room where he later tried to turn the entire narrative against me. But that wasn't going to go the way he thought. When Mark stormed into the conference room that morning, I already knew what he was planning. He moved with that fast, clipped arrogance he always had when he'd convinced himself he was about to put someone in their place. And I had seen enough of his patterns to know. When Mark felt exposed, he didn't retreat. He attacked. Loudly, aggressively, and with the confidence of a man who genuinely believed volume and confidence were the same as truth. But this time, I wasn't walking into that room as the employee who'd let him twist narratives for months. I walked in with documentation, with timestamps, with context, and more importantly, with clarity. The kind that makes a man dangerous to someone who thrives on confusion. The meeting was already in motion when I entered. 3 managers, HR, a representative from the client-facing team, and Mark, already leaning forward in his chair like he'd been holding court for 10 minutes. "There he is," he said loudly, smiling like he was greeting an old friend from across a bar. "Glad you could join us, considering the mess we woke up to." Mess. He said it casually, like the word didn't carry the weight of a career behind it. I sat down without looking at him. I wasn't giving him eye contact yet. Eye contact is a gift, and gifts should be earned. "Let's get straight to it," he continued. "We're behind on the client presentation because certain tasks weren't completed on time. I've been trying to guide." I cut him off, not rudely, just directly enough to crack his rhythm. "Mark, before we go into opinions, we should probably start with facts." His jaw flexed. He hated being interrupted, even politely. One of the managers, a woman named Teresa, who had been in the company longer than both of us combined, lifted an eyebrow. "Go ahead," she said to me. I opened my laptop, calm, methodical, not rushing, and I projected the email thread onto the screen with a single click. "Here's the timeline," I began. "Client emailed yesterday at 8:12 a.m., asking for the final confirmations and missing sections. They CC'd both Mark and me." I highlighted the line. No commentary. The silence in the room did it for me. "Here's my first message to Mark," I continued. "Sent at 8:23. No response. My second at 10:01. Third at 11:14. Fourth at 1:30. 5th at 3:02, 6th at... Mark cut in. This isn't productive. We don't need a play-by-play. But we do, Teresa said flatly. Keep going. He leaned back in his chair, hiding his irritation behind a smirk. I didn't respond to it. I kept going. This, I said, switching to another screenshot, is the access log for the shared drive. Mark restricted file access at 9:04 a.m., which prevented me from opening or editing the deck. That made someone across the table inhale sharply. I didn't look to see who. And, I added, keeping my voice steady, this is a screen recording of me trying to access the files throughout the day. You can see the error message. You can also see the timestamps matching the messages I sent. Mark laughed, a sharp, forced sound. This is ridiculous. You're making it look intentional. It's a glitch. It can tell you drives glitch all the time. Before anyone could respond, I clicked to the next slide. The activity report. The report that showed he had opened those same files multiple times throughout the day. Not a glitch, not an accident, not a misunderstanding. Intent. The room went still. Then I added the last piece. The client's second email sent at 5:16 p.m. Again CCing both of us, asking for confirmation and clearly becoming frustrated. And here, I finished, is my message to Mark at 6:17 p.m., explaining the risks. No response. And here's his call to me at 10:59 p.m. I didn't play the audio. I didn't need to. The silence was thick enough. Mark cleared his throat, desperate for a foothold. Look, we can all twist logs however we want. None of this changes the fact that he didn't finish the deck. That's the issue. No, I said gently. The issue is that you made it impossible for me to finish anything, then ignored every attempt to escalate. He opened his mouth, but Teresa spoke first. Mark, she said, and the steel in her voice didn't need volume. Is there any reason you locked the files without telling the project owner? He tried to smirk, but there was no confidence behind it now, only nerves. I was testing initiative, he said. Testing initiative. It was such a profoundly stupid answer that it made the HR rep flinch. I didn't say anything else. I had said enough. And then came the moment, the micro-catharsis I didn't even know I'd been waiting for. The client-facing manager spoke for the first time. A quiet man, but respected. Someone who chose words carefully. He looked at Mark and said, "Why does this timeline look like sabotage?" The word hit the room like a dropped weight. Mark sputtered, "Are you serious? Sabotage? Me? This kid is spinning the story because he messed up." Another voice cut in. HR. Calm, controlled. "We're going to pause here. Mark, we need to speak with you separately, now." He tried to resist. This is blown way out of proportion. But nobody agreed with him. Nobody defended him. And the moment he stood up, stiff, tight, angry, I finally looked him in the eyes. Not mocking, not smug, just honest. You did this to yourself. They took him out of the room. When the door closed behind him, there was a long, heavy silence, the kind that doesn't come from confusion but realization. Realization that a line had been crossed in broad daylight. Teresa exhaled slowly. "Well," she said, "that was something." Then came the second microcatharsis, soft, understated, but powerful. She looked at me and nodded once. Good job documenting everything. It wasn't praise, it was validation, the kind I hadn't expected from anyone in that room. 5 minutes later, HR returned. "Mark is temporarily suspended," they announced, "pending internal review." And then silence, the kind that means someone's gone wrong. Mark's suspension hit the office like a quiet shockwave, not the dramatic kind. Nobody gasped or whispered or exchanged looks. It was the opposite. People just worked more calmly. The tension that usually hovered around the department, like static, suddenly thinned out, and for the first time in months, the office felt breathable. But the real shift didn't happen in the building. It happened inside me. They thought I was gone. I wasn't. That week, the project didn't collapse without Mark. It stabilized. The managers asked me to step in as interim lead for the client presentation, and I didn't hesitate. I wasn't gloating, and I wasn't trying to prove myself. I just wanted to do my job, without the usual sabotage quietly gnawing at every task. In 2 days, the deck was fully rebuilt. Clean, accurate, coherent. Every piece in the right place. Every note addressed. When we presented it, the client didn't even realize anything chaotic had happened internally. And that was the highest compliment you can get in a crisis. They called it our most consistent update yet. When the call ended, Teresa looked at me and said, "If this is what you can do without interference, we need to talk about your role here." There wasn't praise in her voice. There was assessment, evaluation, possibility. A few days later, HR called me in for a follow-up. They asked more questions, reviewed more logs, and requested copies of the screenshots, messages, and files I'd shown in the meeting. I handed everything over without embellishment. Just facts. Straight lines, clear timelines. They told me the investigation would take 2 weeks. It took 4 days. On the 5th morning, Mark returned, not to his office, but to HR. He walked in through the side entrance, shoulders rigid, eyes locked forward. He didn't look at anyone. He didn't greet anyone. He moved like a man walking into a building that no longer belonged to him. He stayed inside for 30 minutes. When the door finally opened again, he wasn't wearing his badge. Security escorted him out. Not aggressively, just formally. Procedure. His box wasn't even full. A mug, a notebook. A plant he bought only because he saw everyone else had one. He didn't look back. HR sent a company-wide email an hour later. Mark is no longer with the company. Leadership transition is in progress. That was it. No tribute. No thank you for your service. No spin. Just a clean administrative ending. And somehow that simplicity satisfied me more than any dramatic downfall ever could. I didn't celebrate, didn't smile, didn't feel triumphant. I just felt level, even, like a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying had finally been lifted. A week passed, work settled. The anxiety that used to creep up my spine every time my phone buzzed melted away. I slept better, ate better, spoke more clearly in meetings. Colleagues who never used to look me in the eye now asked for my input. One afternoon, HR called me back in. This time the tone was different, warmer, deliberate. "We'd like you to take over the project officially," they said. "And, if you're open to it, we want you to step into a team lead position. Your documentation, initiative, and crisis management were exceptional." I nodded. Not shocked, not desperate, just steady. "I can handle it," I said. "We know," the HR rep replied. It felt like stepping into a room I'd been standing outside of for years. The promotion went through the next week. Not a temporary fix, a permanent move. My pay increased. My responsibilities shifted. My decisions finally mattered. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like correction, like the universe finally aligning something that had been off balance for too long. And yet the real closure didn't come from HR, or the new title, or the calm that settled in my workdays. It came 2 Fridays later. I stopped by a cafe near the office to grab a coffee, a pretty standard routine. But when I walked in, I spotted him, Mark, sitting at one of the small round tables by the window. He wasn't wearing his usual polished outfit. No pressed shirt, no expensive watch. His hair wasn't styled. He looked ordinary, almost unfamiliar. He had a stack of papers in front of him, a resume, a list of companies, a half-filled job application, and beside it, a coffee cup he hadn't touched. For a moment, he didn't see me, and in that moment, I saw the truth. No meeting room could have shown me. He wasn't powerful. He wasn't intimidating. He wasn't some figure towering over my career. He was just a man who had pushed too far for too long, and finally ran out of people willing to absorb the hit for him. When he finally looked up and recognized me, something in his expression faltered. Not anger, not embarrassment, not even resentment. Just a quiet, hollow awareness. He expected me to sneer, or smirk, or linger just long enough to make him feel small. I didn't. I just gave him a single nod, neutral, polite, and went to order my coffee. Not out of forgiveness, not out of superiority, just because he no longer deserved space in my head. That was the moment I felt the real ending, the clean one, the grown one, the kind where you don't need the last word because your life speaks for itself now. When I left the cafe, he was still sitting there, staring at the papers in front of him like he wasn't sure where to start. And for the first time since this entire situation began, I realized I wasn't angry anymore. Not because he didn't deserve anger, he did, but because anger was too heavy to carry into the life I was finally stepping into. I walked back to the office. My office now, technically. A small upgrade, but symbolic in a way that mattered. I sat down at my desk, opened my laptop, started working. And for the first time since I joined that company, the work felt exactly like what it should have been all along. Mine.